As the blistering heat of the summer sun bore down on California, the LA wildfires raged in a way that felt almost like a force of nature out of control. For days, the fire had been a monster, consuming everything in its path, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The air was thick with smoke, and the once clear skies had been obscured by a suffocating haze. Thousands of residents had been evacuated, watching helplessly as the flames threatened their homes, their families, their entire lives. But amidst the chaos, one person, someone you might not expect, noticed something that no one else had seen. Barron Trump. Yes, the youngest son of former President Donald Trump. He's known for keeping a low profile, staying mostly out of the public eye. But in that moment, as he watched the devastation unfold from a distance, he saw something strange, something odd about the fire. Something that others had missed. And it's this small, almost unnoticed detail that could change everything we thought we knew about these fires. You see, the wildfires in LA were not just another natural disaster. They were part of something bigger, something more complex than anyone had imagined. Barron, with his quiet observance and sharp attention to detail, had stumbled upon a clue, something that had eluded experts, firefighters, and even the people who lived through the worst of it. But what was it? What exactly did Barron notice that was so important? To understand this, you need to know a little more about Barron Trump. While his siblings have all had their moments in the spotlight, Barron has always been a mystery, a figure who rarely seeks attention. He's known for his intelligence and his reserved nature, often described as someone who observes more than he participates. And it's this very trait that might have led him to notice the one thing that no one else had picked up on. As the fire continued to rage on, Barron's observations sparked curiosity. Was he just another young person witnessing a tragedy, or was there something more to his quiet observations? What had he seen that others had overlooked? And why, out of all the people who were paying attention to the crisis, did he seem to be the only one who had caught on to something that could change the entire narrative around the wildfires? What Barron Trump noticed might seem small, almost insignificant at first glance. But when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, the implications are anything but small. Barron's discovery isn't just about the fires themselves. It's about understanding the forces at play in a way that we haven't before. It's about seeing a hidden connection that no one was willing to acknowledge, not even the experts. As the fires continued to spread across the hills and forests of Los Angeles, the news media was filled with images of destruction. The cameras captured the flames devouring acres of land, the smoke rising like a pillar to the sky. But Barron, watching from afar, saw something different in the way the fire was behaving. It wasn't just the wind, the dry conditions, or the typical factors that make wildfires so dangerous. Something else was driving the fire, something more insidious, something no one had even considered. What if Barron was seeing a pattern? A pattern that, if followed, could explain the wildfires in a way that would challenge everything we've known about them. What if his quiet observation had uncovered a hidden truth that the media wasn't willing to report? These are the questions that kept Barron up at night. And as he dug deeper, the more unsettling the answers became. In the midst of this disaster, Barron didn't just sit back and watch. His instincts told him to do something, to investigate further, to follow that gut feeling that told him something wasn't right. And in doing so, he uncovered a shocking truth. A truth that could change the way we think about wildfires, the environment, and even how we respond to natural disasters. But as we'll find out, not everyone was happy about Barron's discovery. The deeper he looked into the fire, the more dangerous his investigation became. There were forces at play, powerful forces, that didn't want this truth to come to light. And as Barron dug deeper, the danger grew. It wasn't just about the fire anymore. It was about something bigger, something that could have far-reaching consequences. But the question remains, who's behind it all? And what do they have to gain from keeping the truth hidden? As Barron continued to piece together the puzzle, he began to uncover connections that seemed too far-fetched to believe. But the more he researched, the more undeniable the evidence became. Was it possible that the fires weren't just an accident of nature? Could there be something or someone deliberately influencing the course of these events? Barron couldn't shake the feeling that he was onto something big, something that no one else had dared to question. But just as he was starting to get closer to the answers, things started to get dangerous. His research didn't go unnoticed. People began asking questions. Questions about his findings, about what he had uncovered, and about how he knew what he knew. Suddenly, Barron wasn't just a curious young man trying to understand a wildfire. He had become a target, and the closer he got to the truth, the more perilous his situation became. As the tension mounted, Barron found himself caught between two worlds. The world of normalcy, where everything was as it seemed, and the world of hidden agendas, where the fires were merely a symptom of a much larger, more complex issue. He could feel the walls closing in around him, and every answer he uncovered seemed to lead to more questions. Was Barron on the verge of revealing something the world wasn't ready to hear? Or had he gone too far down the rabbit hole, putting himself in a position where there was no turning back? But just as Barron was about to share his findings with the world, something happened that changed everything. Something unexpected, something that no one saw coming. And just like that, the mystery surrounding the LA wildfires took an even darker turn, leaving everyone, including Barron, wondering what would happen next. Will Barron Trump be able to reveal the truth before it's too late? Or will the forces working against him keep the hidden story buried forever? The answers, if they even exist, are just beyond reach. And Barron knows that whatever happens next, the world will never look at these wildfires the same way again. The stage is set. The mystery is far from over. Stay tuned. The truth is out there, but can Barron uncover it before it's too late? As the days passed, Barron couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. It wasn't just paranoia. He had always been an observant person, and now more than ever, he could sense the eyes on him. What started as a quiet curiosity about the LA wildfires had turned into a dangerous obsession. Each new piece of information he uncovered made him feel like he was stumbling closer to something far bigger than just a natural disaster. Barron knew that no one would take him seriously if he simply came out and said what he had discovered. Who would listen to a 17-year-old kid? But Barron wasn't the type to back down. His quiet demeanor and sharp mind were both his strength and his curse. Most of the world saw him as the quiet, distant son of Donald Trump, a young man who rarely spoke in public and stayed out of the limelight. But Barron was more than just the shadow of his famous father. He was someone who could see the world in ways others couldn't. And it was this ability to think outside the box that had led him to notice the strange patterns in the fire. The wildfires had begun as they always did, during the dry summer months, fueled by high winds and an unrelenting heat wave. But Barron noticed something different this time. The way the fire was spreading didn't make sense. Wildfires in California are notoriously unpredictable, but Barron had been tracking their movement, studying the terrain, the wind patterns, and even satellite images. Something was off. It was as if the fire was being guided, as though someone or something was manipulating its path, pushing it in directions that didn't follow the natural course of events. Barron felt a chill run down his spine every time he compared the patterns. It was no longer a random act of nature. There was something intentional about it. At first, he tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was the dry conditions combined with the erratic weather. But as he dug deeper, the evidence started to pile up. Barron stumbled upon reports from local fire experts and environmentalists who mentioned unusual behavior in the fire's progression. Some even suggested that the wildfires seemed to have been set intentionally, though there was no direct proof. Yet, the more Barron examined, the more pieces of a larger puzzle started to fall into place. What was the real cause? Was there a conspiracy at play? Barron wasn't alone in his suspicions. Several local residents had also noticed strange things, like the fire appearing in places it normally wouldn't, or how it seemed to leap from one area to another without any obvious reason. And there were rumors, whispers in the community about people who had seen unusual vehicles or helicopters hovering above the fire zones in the middle of the night. Some even spoke about hearing odd noises coming from the mountains, but no one dared to say anything publicly. Everyone was too afraid. Yet Barron, despite the mounting tension, pressed on. With each passing day, he found himself sinking deeper into the investigation. The more he learned, the more isolated he became. He had always been distant, but now it felt like he was truly alone. His family had no idea what he was doing. He hadn't told anyone about the disturbing connections he was uncovering, not even his parents. In a way, he knew that if he revealed what he was finding, it would only invite more trouble. Barron wasn't a fool. He understood the stakes of digging too deeply into something like this. The breaking point came when Barron found an unexpected connection in a series of government reports. Hidden between the lines of fire-related legislation and disaster relief programs was a small detail, an obscure mention of an experiment involving the use of controlled fires for environmental research. At first, it seemed innocuous, but Barron dug deeper, and the more he investigated, the more it became clear that there was something more to this research than met the eye. Was this a government experiment gone wrong? Or was something more sinister at play? He found an alarming link between the research and a private company with ties to powerful political figures. Could they be manipulating the fires for profit or worse, using them as a cover for something far darker? Barron's head spun with questions. Who was behind this? Why was the truth being hidden? And more importantly, why had no one else noticed the signs? As the pieces of the puzzle came together, Barron realized he was walking a dangerous line. If he pushed too far, if he dug too deep, he might uncover something that could not only destroy everything he knew, but also put his own life in jeopardy. His investigation didn't go unnoticed. Barron had become a target. As he started to piece together the network behind the fires, he began receiving strange phone calls, emails, and cryptic messages warning him to stop. At first, they were subtle, mild threats disguised as advice. "You're just a kid, Barron. Don't get involved in something you don't understand." But the warnings grew more direct. "Stay out of it, or you'll regret it." Barron's instincts told him to back off. He knew he wasn't prepared for the kind of people who might be involved in this. But the more they threatened him, the more determined he became. There was no going back now. He couldn't ignore the truth, even if it meant putting himself in danger. Meanwhile, the fire continued to burn, ravaging more and more land with each passing day. And with every new report, the public grew more desperate for answers. The news outlets were filled with images of burnt homes and charred landscapes. But no one was talking about what Barron was uncovering. No one was asking the hard questions about what had really caused the fires. They were too focused on the immediate tragedy, on the devastation of the moment, to look deeper into the events surrounding it. And that was exactly what Barron feared. No one was asking the right questions. The media had shifted into a predictable narrative. The wildfires were a result of global warming, of climate change, of the ever-growing threat of nature gone rogue. But Barron had seen enough to know that this was only part of the story. The fires weren't just a result of natural forces. They were being manipulated, and someone had a hand in it. As Barron closed in on the heart of the mystery, he found himself facing a moral dilemma. Was it worth risking everything for the truth? Should he continue his investigation, knowing that the deeper he went, the more dangerous it became? Or should he walk away, leaving the answers hidden, buried in a world that wasn't ready to know the truth? The pressure was mounting, and Barron knew he couldn't keep it to himself for much longer. His silence was becoming unbearable, and with every passing moment, the fire seemed to burn just a little brighter. What would happen when the truth finally came to light? Would Barron be able to expose the forces behind the fires, or would he be silenced before he could finish his investigation? The clock was ticking, and the fires were only getting worse. The storm was coming, and Barron was caught right in the middle of it. But as he prepared to take the next step, something unexpected happened. A twist that would change everything. Just when Barron thought he was getting closer to the truth, something happened that threw everything into chaos. He had finally secured a meeting with someone who had worked at the private company tied to the research he'd uncovered. The company that he suspected was responsible for manipulating the wildfires. The person had agreed to meet him in secret, off the record, in a secluded area away from prying eyes. Barron thought he was about to get the answers he needed, that he would finally connect the dots and expose the truth. But as he walked into the dimly lit room, it was clear that he had walked into something much more dangerous than he ever imagined. The meeting had been a trap. Before Barron could react, a group of men appeared from the shadows, surrounding him. The air grew thick with tension. They were armed, their faces cold and unfeeling. Barron's heart raced, but he stood his ground. He wasn't about to back down now, not after everything he had uncovered. The lead man, who didn't seem surprised to see Barron, stepped forward. "We knew you'd come, Barron. We've been watching you for a while." Barron's mind raced. He had been expecting some kind of resistance, but not this. These were no ordinary people. These were the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes, the ones who had orchestrated the fires, and now they had him cornered. But what did they want with him? What had they planned for him? With a cold smile, the leader of the group revealed the truth Barron had been searching for all along. The wildfires weren't an accident. They were part of an experiment, a large-scale operation designed to test how fires could be controlled and used to manipulate land for financial gain. The research had been funded by a group of wealthy elites with ties to politics, and Barron's investigation had put them on edge. They didn't want anyone, especially someone like Barron, to expose the truth. Barron stood frozen, his thoughts tumbling over one another. It was worse than he had imagined. They were intentionally causing destruction, and the fires were just the tip of the iceberg. This was bigger than just a few people trying to cover their tracks. It was an entire system designed to profit from chaos. But before Barron could react, the unexpected happened. His phone buzzed, a text message flashing on the screen. It was from a number he didn't recognize, but the message sent a chill down his spine. "They're lying to you. You're not alone. Get out now." For a moment, Barron froze, unsure what to make of it. Who could have sent that message? And why? But then, without thinking, he made a snap decision. He wasn't going down without a fight. With a sudden burst of energy, he ducked and dashed toward the exit, his heart pounding in his chest. The men immediately chased after him, but Barron had the advantage of surprise. He knew the layout of the area, and he used that knowledge to evade them, darting through narrow corridors and hidden passages until he found his way outside. He didn't stop running until he reached the nearest safe house, an unmarked building on the outskirts of town that his contact had set up for him. Out of breath and shaking, Barron slammed the door shut behind him and collapsed to the floor. But even in the safety of the building, his mind was racing. He had narrowly escaped, but the truth was now clearer than ever. The people behind the fires weren't just a small group of criminals. They were part of a much larger, more dangerous network, one that stretched far beyond California and far beyond what Barron had imagined. They had manipulated not just the wildfires, but the entire public narrative. And now, Barron had the evidence to prove it. As he gathered his thoughts and reviewed the research on his laptop, Barron knew that he couldn't keep this to himself any longer. The world needed to know what had really been going on. He didn't care how dangerous it was anymore. He couldn't stand by while innocent people were being hurt by the greed of those in power. Barron took a deep breath, typed out a message, and hit send. He had made the decision. He was going to expose it all. A few days later, Barron's story broke wide open. Thanks to his research and the hidden support of his unknown contact, the truth came to light in a way that no one had expected. The wildfires were not just the result of natural conditions. They were part of a systematic effort to manipulate land and resources for profit. As the news spread, investigations began, and those responsible were finally held accountable. The media picked up the story, and the public, shocked by the revelations, demanded justice. Barron Trump became the unlikely hero in the battle against corporate greed and environmental exploitation. His quiet determination had led him to uncover a conspiracy that no one else had been brave enough to question. And while his actions brought him into the public eye, Barron remained the same, quiet, introspective, and more determined than ever to protect the truth. As the fires were finally brought under control, Barron reflected on everything he had learned. The events that had unfolded were a painful reminder of how far some would go for power and money. But they also served as a wake-up call for the world, showing just how important it was to pay attention to the small details, to ask the hard questions, and to never accept the easy answers. In the end, Barron's story wasn't just about wildfires or conspiracies. It was about the courage to seek the truth, no matter the cost. And as the world slowly began to heal from the devastation, Barron knew one thing for certain: things would never be the same again. The fires had revealed something far greater than destruction. They had revealed the resilience of those willing to fight for the truth. And Barron had proven that even in the darkest of times, one person's determination could make all the difference.